All right, we are back, OUA fans, with another season preview. And joining us, head coach J-P Circelli of the Windsor Lancers. Coach, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining myself this afternoon.
Well, it's my pleasure and happy to be back and looking forward to 2024.
And with that comes training camp. So I will ask you, how has training camp been going as we approach? I guess we're in week 1 now for you guys as you gear up to play the Queens Gaels this weekend.
Yeah, it's been a wild training camp from the standpoint there are a lot of moving pieces, and we have a very veteran group, so the pace has been very different than maybe in some of the past years. So I think it's a little bit tougher when you're a freshman and you've got a veteran group because we're moving very quickly. I think some of the similar things that other teams are experiencing, you want to start playing somebody else because your defense and offense are kind of sick of hitting each other, and it's time to get to that next opponent. So as much as we talk about camp being just a week, really, it's really short. It's probably the limit for where our guys are at least at this point. I think a lot of teams probably feel the same. It's time to hit someone in a different colored jersey.
Absolutely. We've talked to a few players and coaches now as we've gone through these, and they're all saying the same thing. Everybody is itching to get to that week 1 opponent. But I do want to talk about something you touched on, which is the leadership of your team. You have a very deep leadership group. And what does that do as you go through camp and get ready for week 1? How does that help, the young guys? How does that help yourself and your coaching staff?
Well, anytime you've got an experienced team, you have veterans returning, there aren't too many things that are going to surprise them, and they've kind of been there, done that. And I think any team, once you establish that, they're really able to model what the standard needs to be. And so the young guys see that, it permeates throughout your team. And the younger players understand, hey, if I want to get to this next level, or if I want to be a contributor, this is the standard that I have to reach and I have to maintain going forward. So the fact that we've got a lot of leaders and guys who've been at it for a while now, that really sets the standard for the entire program.
And speaking of that standard, I'll rewind a little bit. Finished off the season last year, 6-2 in the regular season. How do you kind of point to that and say, look, this is kind of now our standard, but we want to surpass this? Because I know the playoffs didn't quite end how you wanted it to. Obviously, the goal for every team is the Yates Cup, but how do you look at that 6-2 record that you accomplished last year and say, this is where we want to get to, and not only get to, but push past?
I think it's like anything. The top programs in this conference who are consistently there, their standards a little bit different. And for us being a younger program in terms of the types of players we had on the roster when we first started, we're now at a point where that's going to be our new standard. That's going to be our new expectation. It's not good enough to just make the playoffs now. Now we're expecting to have a deep playoff run. And like you said, the goal with any of the teams, any of the 11 teams, it's to get to the Yates Cup championship. So I think just the fact that you can look at the past year and you don't want to say you fell short or anything like that, because there's a lot of great things that we were able to accomplish. I think it just depends where your program is at. And, if that's something seen as something that was desirable, something achievable, and knowing going forward, our guys can look back on the past successes of last year and say, okay, we can now hang with the top teams. We're able to do that. We can go toe to toe with them. And now you become more of a regular in the conversation of who can compete for the crown in Ontario. There's still the best teams that you're chasing, but to now be in that conversation versus, this is a nice team that's slowly getting there. I think that's something that fuels a lot of the players.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we love to pick out about your Windsor Lancers as we look at the success that you did have is, your tenacity through the trenches on both sides of the ball. You have great offensive line play, great defensive line play. How important is that for you to sustain over the season and, help lead some of that success on the field?
Yeah, I think anytime your playing experience, if it happens to be in the trenches, which is where mine has been, you quickly ID that the offensive line, the defensive line are going to set the tone. And whether it's 3-down football, 4-down football, you have to be able to run the ball and you have to be able to stop the run. And if you can't do those things consistently, it makes for difficult playing situations, especially as you get holder into those later playoff runs. So that's always been a focal point for us, and it's going to continue to be a focal point. And that player development is so important because, as you guys know, it's difficult to have that blue chip offensive or defensive lineman come in as a freshman and be a star. There's some rare circumstances where they're good enough to play right away, but to be a polished, finished product never really happens. So that development year round is so important, and something that, you know, our program really prides itself on.
And two of the pillars along that offensive line unit I want to talk about, Owen Mueller, Jackson Morgan, their roles along this offensive line, just talk about their importance to, you know, the run scheme, the pass scheme, what you guys are able to do through their ability to kind of move some bodies out there on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're talking about two veteran players who've been with us since we took over this program in 2019. So the fact that you've got leadership, guys that you can lean on, and then they're able to really lean on their past CFL experience, it just changes the whole mentality for the entire group, because you've got younger players looking up and saying, okay, here's the standard that you need if you want to play next level. And at the same time, you now have veteran guys that say, hey, here's maybe a better way to approach things. Here's something that was a little different that we were able to do at the pro level. And then as coaches, we're able to kind of, you know, work the best of both worlds, say, okay, let's maybe try this now, or because we're a little bit more of a veteran group, we can do things a little bit differently in terms of our approach and preparation.
And I do want to talk about approach and preparation as we circle back here to week one. I know you said you're looking forward to hitting another opponent here, but you do have, you know, your team on team scrimmage, your blue on gold game. How important is that to kind of gear up, retool, get some of those live reps in? I know it's not full live reps because nobody's trying to hit their teammates too hard out there, but just the importance of kind of implementing those intense practices and situations.
It's a big part of our process when it comes down to timing, whether it's in the special teams game, whether it's the quarterback's time with the receivers. You really need not so much live reps, but essentially live reps to really get it going. And defensively, just being able to communicate, get the calls down. And it gives some of the younger players an opportunity to really showcase their talents, to say, hey, I want to be a part of this roster, this stress roster. I want to make a difference. So just the idea that it's live bullets, but in a controlled setting, just makes it a little bit different than maybe when we're working Skelly or a run Skelly period. So I think it was something that was really important for our players and our development, and certainly I'm sure a lot of other teams feel the same way.
Certainly. And you do kick the week off, week one, with the Queens Golden Gaels, like I mentioned before. You have them at home though. You don't have to take a bus trip. I know some of them are a little longer than others, and especially if that Queens game's the other way around, you know, going to the other end of Ontario is a long bus ride. But for you to have that home game week one, do you feel that's advantageous for your squad?
Yeah, absolutely. For teams like ourselves, or, you know, I'll even throw Queens in there, but definitely the Ottawa schools, you know, those long trips are difficult. It can wear on you. And it's not to say that there's a huge advantage, but definitely it makes it easier that we don't have to travel week one, and, you know, the favors kind of return to us week two when we have to travel to Ottawa. So I think it's going to help us, but at the same time, we're taking on, you know, one of the class programs within the OUA, and led by one of the best coaching staff. So it's going to be a very, very difficult challenge for us week one, taking on Queens.
And just talk a little bit more about the matchup against Queens, because we do know they are a darn good team. They are, like yourselves, physical in the line play battle, and they have a quarterback that likes to throw the ball around the field in Alex Freakin. So gearing up for a team like Queens, what does that entail for week one for Windsor?
Well, I think one of the things that makes it, you know, more challenging than usual is, you know, already kind of talked about how great Coach Snyder and his staff are. But the fact that there's a couple changes with their offensive coordinator and their special teams coordinator, there's this big unknown factor. And as much as you want to say, here's what the team looked like a year ago, obviously there's changes on their roster as well. So it's difficult to kind of look back and say, okay, this is kind of what we're going to be seeing. And we know from our matchup a year ago, they were missing a lot of key pieces, both on offense and defense. So probably the score in that game didn't really tell the entire story. We know that they're going to be, 100%. They've got all their guys. They got all their coaches in place, and it's going to be a very big challenge for us because, as you said, I think they boast one of the best defensive lineups. They've got one of the most creative, if not elusive, quarterbacks, and they've got great offensive and defensive minds in Coach Snyder and Coach McManus. So that's going to be a huge challenge for us coming out the gate.
And I know there's got to be a lot of excitement in your building among the coaches, among the players. How do you kind of encourage but also temper the balance between excitement and overexcitement for a game like this? Because it is an exciting time for these players. Week one, football season's back. I know, myself as just kind of in the media here with the OUA, I'm excited for week one to be back too. So how do you stay focused while being excited and letting that fuel how you come out in week one?
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult balance. We're an emotional team. We wear it on our sleeves, and we want that to fuel us as we go out and play. But at the same time, you can't cross that threshold, and then it starts leading to being undisciplined, um, having breakdowns in system, taking on characteristic penalties. So I'd love to say I know the exact formula. It's hard. It's hard, especially when you come out, you'll have the home crowd amped up. Both teams are going to be excited because both teams are 0-0. So you're starting from scratch. You want to put your stamp on it. And we know based on where Queens was a year ago and how our game went, that they're going to be ready and they're going to want to really take it to us. So like I said, it's going to be a big challenge, and we've definitely got to keep our emotions in check.
Absolutely. I think that's it for me. I won't take up too much more of your time, but I do want to wish yourself and the Windsor Lancers the best of luck as we approach the 2024 football season. I'm certainly very excited for what's in store for you guys this season. So thank you so much for taking the time to jump on here and talk a little bit about the Lancers and the 2024 season coming up.
Well, like I said, it's my pleasure, and whatever we can do to help you guys, we're going to always be there. So thank you so much, and thank you for making OUA football relevant.